I am. Well, good morning and welcome to a special Hobby Hotline. We have this Saturday morning edition. I'm joined by Uncle Rich Klein and Chris from Stale Gum and BaseballCardpedia.com. We have a bunch of exciting things going on in the hobby right now, and we were just talking offline about some of the things that actually were not on the original topic, but I want to give a shout out to. Chris, will you jump in on your and finish your Jackie Robinson story? Let's start off with some fun.
Today is the 50th anniversary of Jackie Robinson's last public appearance. It was before Game 2 of the World Series, and this was the clip that I'm pretty sure most people have seen this, where he finishes up, he gives a few words, and he finishes up saying, "I hope someday there's somebody who looks like me in the third base coaching box," because back then, the manager served as the third base coach. And he died, I think, 9 or 10 days later. So he was suffering from diabetes later in life. And he died, and I think he was like 53 or 54 when he died. So yeah, 50 years ago today, Jackie Robinson's last public appearance. So.
Yeah, and Rich, you were talking about that, and Chris Chambliss. What are
you mentioned, and that's a great moment in New York sports history. Chris Chambliss off Mark Littell leading off the 9th inning, and it's a long fly ball. I believe it's like 10:43 at night. Some of the films actually show the time as he hits it. And one of the great things is there's a shot. What I think it was on the Yankee yearbook cover the next year of Thurman Munson in his catching gear, jumping up as he sees the ball go out of the ballpark. And if you remember the highlight, one other thing about that is Chris Chambliss, who played some football in high school, maybe even in college, reverting back to his running back days, trying to, get to home plate because he had to deal with all those fans. And, thankfully we don't see that as much anymore. But, in those 70s, the fans really got on the field, and it was sometimes you felt for your life for these players. As I was mentioning before we went on the air, if you ever watch a film of Game 6 of the 77 World Series, the one where Reggie hits the 3 homers, Reggie Jackson, that is, in the 9th inning, you see fans sitting on the outfield fence waiting to jump onto the field and celebrate when the Yankees hit the homer. It's a scary sight. And
you talked about Chris Chambliss. Rick, you talked about Chris Chambliss.
But an outfielder had to go to the wall to catch.
But Rich, you talked about Chris Chambliss. He never touched home plate.
No.
They brought home plate out at like 12:30 that night and had him touch home plate. And, there was like an appeal filed, and they basically just said, under the circumstances, what you did was fine. But no, technically.
So what's he supposed to do?
I mean, what's the craziest baseball fan rush we've seen? Was it that? Was it? Hank Aaron's more famous, but less people. Who else is?
When I started following baseball in 1967, yes, I'm old, and I remember watching the Red Sox and the Twins playing on a Sunday afternoon, and at the end of the game, the fans rushed the field. And even in Fenway Park in 67, some of the players were afraid, and somebody stole, I think, Jim Lomborg's cap. And, players kept losing stuff in those days, but it wasn't so raucous. And then you get to New York in the 70s. Then it's raucous. Mark Hoyle is right. Disco Demolition Night was probably the final straw in getting fans on the field. That was a real riot. That in the 74 Cleveland Indians 10-cent beer
10-cent beer night. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was I forgot about that. Was that?
There's no footage of that though. but
Well,
we know the stories. So.
There are some pictures and a lot of stories, and it was a Texas Ranger. Somehow the Texas Rangers / Washington Senators got involved in all these like games that got forfeited in the 70s. Like the last game at when the Washington Senators played at RFK Stadium had to be a forfeit because the fans stormed the field.
All right, now contrast that to Jeffrey Mayer.
Jeffrey Mayer made a catch in the outfield. I mean, he made a catch. But he didn't get on the field. He interfered with the ball. But you can argue he reached out. But it's not like he got on the field and hit the player or anything or put a player's life at risk.
Okay. Or Steve Bartman, for that matter.
Yeah.
Did the same thing, just stuck his hand out.
Well, one's over the line of play and one's behind the line of play.
Right, both Bartman and Mayer. And Bartman is behind the line, but...
And Mayer was over the line.
Right.
And that's the difference. Is one
right, but in neither case did they really put anybody's playing life, anybody really at risk.
No.
I mean, 10, 15 years ago, Tom Gamboa, a coach, and nobody knows why, but a father and a son went on the field and assaulted him.
How about the great Morgana? What happened to the great Morgana?
Morgana.
Remember she was
nobody ever objected to being kissed by Morgana.
I don't remember her retiring. I don't remember an announcement. Was there ever a card of her? Is there a short print?
Yes, there were Playboy cards.
There was. I had it too.
There is a card set Playboy made of her.
Unbelievable. Okay, well, if somebody has that, I would love to see the.
Well, there's also a card that Upper Deck made in 2008.
Yeah.
It was. If you give me a second, I'll go get it. But it's they made like caricature cards of like all the presidential candidates that year. Right. And they made one of Hillary Clinton as Morgana, but then they accidentally had to pull it from production. Gimmick.
I'm sorry.
I digress, but
you see the card
it was kind of like the Billy Ripken card, only this was not really an accident. This was kind of a gimmick. And if you give me a couple seconds, I will show you that card.
All right. Well, Rich, I'll ask. Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
So
Rich,
I'll be right back.
Go, Chris. Rich, from growing up, watching on TV, any sport, what do you remember as kind of the biggest crowd crashing celebrations?
As I said, I remember the 67 Red Sox thing, from NBC and Channel 4 in New York on a Sunday. It was like so wild. I thought that was normal, that fans came on the field. And
well, the NBA
the 69 Mets, when they won the World Series, all the fans came on the field and destroyed it. You see this still, and I don't know if they've stopped this in college basketball. But when a team pulls an upset at home over a ranked rival, you see the fans storm, and thankfully, very few people ever get hurt. But it's always scary. And
the NBA and basketball, like you said, they still do it all the time.
NBA not as much. In fact, the NBA really cracked down after that 2004 Ron Artest fight. They
just did a documentary on that. That was crazy.
Well, and the thing was, I think Artest was trying to do the right thing, and then it got like round two. He was trying to get out of the way, and then other people got involved. That was just a bad night. And I had a friend of mine who was Chris is going to show us that card.
Not sure if you can see that, but let me get some light on it. There it is. Hillary Clinton as Morgana, the kissing bandit.
All right, let me get you a better screenshot here.
There we go.
Oh, no wonder they got rid of that card real quickly.
I don't think it does.
I don't think they got rid of it real quickly. It's just that they purposely short printed this for.
Well, I would not be surprised if we don't know about it, but there was a little communication from Hillary Clinton's office, like, you get rid of that card, or you're going to be sued for a lot of money, and you're not going to have a baseball license very soon. Well, 2 years later, they didn't have a baseball license anyway, but that was a different subject. that was real near upper death experience in 2010.
I don't think they did Morgana justice, but we can move on from her.
By the way, Mark Hoyle pointed out how there's, and I'll have to go search for video of the night of that game I'm talking about. The day before, like a half innings missing, but it's the oldest known video full game. There's the Saturday game between the Red Sox and the Twins has been saved completely. And that's even cooler, where you see a complete 1967 game that's not a World Series game. It's the oldest game saved in color of a regular season game, if I remember the technical correctly. So, I can actually watch a game from my youth. I remember watching that at a Sabre convention up in Boston in 2002.
Well, was that when they would do the wood sticks and to make the ball sound and replay it?
Yeah, and Mark Hoyle talks about I think Mike Milbury thing. I had a friend of mine who was a PR person for for Madison Square Garden, and the Rangers, like in 1967, had a situation where they say same similar thing. They went into the stands because they were chasing some fans that were saying some things that weren't right. And the thing is that if you're a fan and you get hit by a puck, and sadly I think there's been one or two people who died by getting hit by a puck, and I think they help, but that's something in your ticket. They announce it, you have to be careful. But a player going into the stands, if you're innocently, something happens to you, you're going to win your lawsuit. I mean, and it's like they were still settling cases on that New York Rangers invasion into the stands 7 years later. They were still trying to settle all the cases. So, you have to be careful. And that's why before every game, there are announcements about, don't do things. That's why your tickets are very clearly said, because that becomes a big illegal issue for the owners.
Well, speaking of big issues for owners, I was at the industry summit. It was a week or two already, and I've been talking to car dealers all over the country, and I am hearing fear on one decision. What is going to happen with allocations moving forward? For those of you that may not be familiar with a lot of the local car shop models, you can pretty much fix a profit margin into your wax and your unopened allotments. And everything else, you can kind of run your shop around singles, shows, online. But that fixed profit margin is a big part of the local card shop. So I'm hearing a lot of fear. What do you guys think about the future of the allotments with Fanatics? And Chris, does it impact, when you're buying as a baseball fan, singles versus wax with what Fanatics would do moving forward?
Well, one good thing is that it's cutting out a lot of these distributors. And a lot of these distributors, they are kind of manipulating the wax market by keeping some wax to themselves and trying to keep it for later. So by having more and more LCSs by essentially direct, I don't see how this is really bad for LCSs. What do you think, Rich?
Well, it's interesting because I sometimes do go to local stores. I went to the current iteration of Nick's Sports Cards a couple weeks ago because there's a very good Jewish style deli 3 doors down, and I was under instructions to buy matzo ball soup.
Very good instructions.
Very good. Yes, very good instructions. So I bought some matzo ball soup, and I stopped at the store, and I had heard through my grapevine that the store owner had been cut off from getting tops directly. And I went into his store, and it was National Baseball Card Trading Day too. So it's a couple months ago. And I looked, sure enough, there's no new tops products of any sort. He was still getting Panini products. And he had a line of 15 people buying singles, buying some of the other stuff he did without having brand new wax. So I think if you're a smart store owner, you can always adjust your model. And so I think you adjust your model. I mean, there'll be people who will, I see our friends from Moco are on, and I'm glad to see them. They've mentioned in the past they're direct with Fanatics. I'd love to see Rex type in his opinion, because he's actually one of the dealers who actually has a Fanatics account. And I suspect Rex will be fine. We've talked about him in the past. His type of store is the model for what Fanatics wants a store to be. So it depends, and if you're a little hole-in-the-wall store in a small town, your model will probably be the same. You'll just figure out a way to get your case or some boxes for your customers. And, you'll make a small profit on the wax, and then you'll get some singles and you'll continue going. I think it depends. And I'm sure some dealers won't be able to adjust, but the ones that can adjust and thrive will be just fine.
Chris, I think this question from Abel spoke to what you were talking about before. Once it switches to Fanatics, will distributors sell to customers directly to maximize profits? I think you were saying that it actually could be better to cut the distributors out, right?
Yeah. And we're already kind of seeing with some products the trading card manufacturers selling directly to consumers anyway. Will there be more of that? Will you be able to buy? Well, I think you can buy Topps flagship directly from Topps.
At what price?
Yeah, but at what price? Are you going to pay an inflated manufacturer's suggested retail price, or are you going to pay market price for it?
And are you going to still need a brick and mortar for some of the allotments?
Yeah, and this is another thing. Is Fanatics going to enforce something like what Panini tried to do maybe 10 years ago? And that's minimum advertised prices or MAP prices, or in economics, we call it resale price maintenance. And that is your customers, if stores have to sell a certain product at a certain price for a certain amount of time before they can discount it. So let's say Series 1 Topps comes out in February. Fanatics can go to their LCSs and say, for 90 days, you have to, at the very least, advertise this at a minimum of, say, $100 a hobby box. And you can't really discount it until May or something. Could we see that happening?
I like your comment. If you cut out the distributors, does it leave more margin to lower the prices for the consumer? And here's Rex. We buy direct from Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, and Leaf. We only use distributors for Pokemon now. Very interesting. Rex, I'd be curious if you've got any information moving forward when the license changes, if there's any indication if that'll change for you.
Yeah, well, Rex, if you're there, why don't you call in?
Or jump on, Rex.
Jump in.
We got
I've heard so much about you, Rex. I'd actually just like to see your face or your kids' faces. I just want to see your faces because I didn't get to go to the National this year, and I heard you were there. So I just want to see you. Forget anything. You don't even have to say anything controversial. I just want to meet you.
Well, let me ask you guys another question on the breakers versus the card stores. Does somebody deserve cases more than the other? Is one better for the hobby, better to get into the hands of the final user? Is there a pro or con?
I think it depends on the individual product, to tell you the truth. I know even though he's in a reduced role, but one of the things Josh Schluber stressed when Fanatics hired him is that not every product is going to be, zip cool or whatever their term they use is, where they do the Dutch auction. Some, Topps flagship will be widely distributed. And, the more widely distributed you do Topps flagship, probably the better it is. But if you have a Gary V product that's hobby, that's like really hobby based and very, the V friend set, that you can probably do the Dutch auction. That you don't have to try to get as wide a distribution on. So I think it may be an individual decision based on each product. And I think that'd be kind of cool because I like going to Walmart or Target and buying a retail box. I guarantee you, I'll still be able to get those because they're not in a lot of places. The big box retail stores are where you have to get your unopened. You still have to have introductories.
Okay. Rex says card makers want to deal with the shops that represent their brand well and have updated systems that can share information. Topps opened our MVP direct account after they were bought by Fanatics.
Rex, that's great information. Thank you.
And that's what I've heard from other people is that Topps is going to be looking at a proprietary customer management software because Fanatics is a marketing company at its heart. And that's what they've really mastered. That's their secret sauce is distribution.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I know when I go into triple cards and I buy packs of triple cards, they have the barcodes, and they use the barcodes. And and to Lawrence and his teams, and he's got 3 stores in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And to their credit, I'm going to switch topics for a second. They've been very upfront about what they're going to do on the Topps Chrome debacle from earlier this year. Where they got issued packs. And he has a 6-step plan for what people, if we know you and we know you bought it, that's fine. But we can check our sales. And if you say you came into our store and bought, paid for cash, we can check our receipts for the day. Basically we can verify.
What percentage of card shops do you think are that organized?
I think 25% at this point, but it's going to grow. It's going to grow.
And are those shops that aren't as organized as that, are they going to get these special MVP direct accounts in the future?
Right. And Rex says, in my meeting with Fanatics execs, they expressed concern that there were people getting waxed that shouldn't be. I assume they meant dishonest breakers and outdated shops. Well, yeah,
Rex, that's a great comment. I think this is what we're talking about. And yes.
And that's exactly what I was saying is where do these cases, and boxes ultimately end up? And maybe, it's because I skew a little older. I'd like to make sure products can get to kids' hands where they don't have to buy in and there's still a chance for something. My concern is that the breakers and the high-end stuff it has captured too much of the product that you can't pull anything as a regular consumer anymore without buying literally cases on end.
Right, and Rex is as we mentioned, Rex is, and thank you for why you're not calling in. I get that, Rex. If you've got customers in the store, don't call it. But he's got a very good point. He's doing a modern day store. Triple is a modern day store. The guy with Triple also is involved with. There's a new store. It's a really cool store called The Beast, which to me is like the idea. I guarantee you, when the Beast, it's about 20 minutes from here. It's going to be what the modern day card store is like. It's not my type of card store. I want the store where I can go search through old commons. I get that. But in today's world, what I like to see, I can go to a show now. We have the Dallas Card Show 6 times a year. I can just go to the Dallas Card Show. But I understand Fanatics, they've already put cards in probably approximately half of their lid stores. They can do... Hey, the barcode works wonderfully. In the lid stores, they own lids. Putting a display of boxes for lids doesn't really cost them very much. They're already paying for the rental space.
But aren't they going to make more money selling it at lids than they will at Walmart?
Well, what it is that they want to control everything. And they've been pretty public about that. You're selling it at lids. You don't have to go through 3 steps to get it to the public. You're going through 1 step. You're sending it directly to a place you own.
All right. Rich or Chris, I'll let one of you jump in. What do you consider an outdated shop, quote unquote?
You'll know it the second you step inside of one.
And I say that seriously. The shop where you go in, they don't, they may have a modern cash register. They may not, they may even put money in a cigar box like we did 30 years ago. I see you can always tell by the lighting.
Yes. The brighter the light, the newer the technology.
Right.
Yeah. If you have yellow lights and you have a card store, then you're probably who we're talking about.
Yeah, and
it's usually been a store that. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chris.
It's usually a store that's probably been around since the junk wax era, or even before that. It's usually a crotchety old man behind the counter who's been there for decades. He's resistant to change. And, why does he need a barcode system or a CRM management? What's that to him?
How much of the industry wants to stay on pen and paper and not stay digital for many reasons?
I think it's something we're going to have to switch to. I mean, you go to a show, that the shows are going to be the last bastion for many people of the old school.
Well, let's talk about the tax implications. It was a PwCC or Golden that's starting to send out a tax reporting, and a lot of this software will also tie in with having to report a lot of taxes that some of these card shops may not have had to before. Does that play into it?
And Rex is right. Rex nailed it, by the way. It's exactly what Chris just said.
They seem to define an outdated store, and I assume you're talking Tops, Fanatics, as an outdated store is one that doesn't have POS, point of sale, customer relationship management, and inventory management system. So yeah, the big threes, and these are used in most industries already. So what we're talking about is not cutting edge technology. This is just new for the hobby. And so I think that's the biggest thing, getting back to the original question is, is everybody scared and is everybody waiting on Fanatics? Yeah, I think it is safe to say yes. I mean, how much money are you going to spend on your marketing budget or travel budget or anything else next year if you don't know what products you're getting? So I think for a lot of local card shops, hopefully we get a little clarification.
Rex with another great point.
Rex always has it. Rex, just call in. Fanatics wants data. Yes, that's what exactly. They want to help drive customers to shop at specific times to see specific products by using the data they gather from the shops. And Rex, not only are you correct, but this goes well beyond the card shops. This is the full Fanatics ecosystem. So if you have bought a jersey, if you've ever been into a team store, if you have bought online, if you have bought at Lids, any of these Fanatics tentacles, they all tie together and they go into that marketing soup. So it's not going to be a coincidence if you buy a Phillies jersey, Chris, that you're going to get pushed, maybe a Mike Schmidt, Fanatics slabbed card. And if you haven't seen that, yes, Fanatics has their own slabbed cards. And I've seen those at some team stores. So that's interesting.
Fanatics has been
slabbed. They just slab them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that they're carrying their slabbed cards and not other people's graded cards. So they're definitely looking to keep it in their own ecosystem. Yeah. And
they said that publicly. So this will not be a surprise to anybody.
Absolutely. So let's go to something a little bit more lighthearted and fun because we got college football and then NFL tomorrow. So we all went into the NFL season and, what did we have? 14 quarterbacks that were all going to break out this year and be best buys. And you had to hold on to half the league's young quarterbacks. Well, we're a couple of weeks in. Rich, what quarterbacks are keepers and which quarterbacks are stinkers after a couple of weeks?
Well, I will tell you, skip all that. Isn't it exciting that Giselle's back on the marketplace?
Hello.
Oh, Rich, I think Morgana got you going today.
Yeah. So, but the guy who's had the most interesting run this year is Tua. Tua has a 6 TD touchdown game, then probably gets a concussion 4 days later, and then gets a real concussion the following week. And it's like he's now a flashpoint for the whole NFL. And quarterbacks are being, I don't want to say overprotected. But the NFL, it's a vicious. Tackling is a hard thing, but all players need to be protected. I want to stress that all players need to be protected.
Sure. And Chris, Rich, I just want to get Chris's comments on Jalen Hurts because if we're talking young quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts out of that breed, because Tua is a great pick. Tua is that next level, not the Burrow, not the Mahomes. Where are you?
People forget that Jalen Hurts was drafted to be the backup for Carson Wentz. So nobody expected him to A, be the starter, and B, be the starter of an undefeated team this late in the season. So expectations were kind of low for this guy, and he's more than exceeded them. So
I'll point out that Tom Brady 21 years ago was in his second year on a 6th-round draft pick when the Jets linebacker, I think Mo Lewis was his name, knocked out the Patriots quarterback. I got to remember his name. Sorry,
it was Drew Bledsoe.
Drew Bledsoe, yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And who knew that it would lead to such an incredible career? So it could very well happen for Jalen Hurts too. That this, Carson Wentz is what the Bears now?
Washington.
Yeah. Okay. Who am I thinking? Oh, that's right. He lost. That's right. Justin Fields is with the Bears. Speaking about Justin Fields, they had 392 yards of total offense and scored 7 points the other night. That's not a bad game for a quarterback to have that much, so it's just a matter of get the ball into the end zone. So, if their team keeps getting 400 yards a game, they'll start scoring touchdowns. You might see Justin Fields make a move up.
Well, Rich, you bring up the question everybody really wants to know is we know Pat Mahomes is good. Justin Herbert, it's been an interesting beginning of the year. But who can people look at? I love the I pulled the Zappy Auto a couple months back, had to go back and top load it. I think this was
had it in a top loader already anyway.
Well, I think this was Davis Mills from last year. I mean, to your point, these guys come, as backups and get an opportunity. And if there's talent around them, they can really bust out. And I think that's what, one of the things that hurts and to some extent Fields is a disappointment. I would say Mac Jones. Is there a bigger quarterback prospect? Am I missing somebody?
Well, he's hurt, which is one of the problems. That's
what I'm saying for value of the cards this year. Who's gone down more?
He'll obviously go down depending on how badly he's hurt and whether Zappy gives up his starting position. Down here, speaking about scrambling, we've got Cooper Rush winning 4 straight games as a backup. What's going to happen to Dak Prescott cards?
Well, that's the whole point.
Yeah,
that's the exact point. Listen, even in Baltimore, Lamar Jackson could be out the door next year. With free agency, that adds into it. Now, I would ask, and I'm going to turn this over to baseball in a minute, but at the NFL at this point, which quarterbacks, if any, would you say this could be a Hall of Famer? I feel good on this guy. Whatever the price is, I feel I can ride this one out. Is there anybody that you look at already at this point? Forget Brady.
I'd like to see whether Russell Wilson can turn his season around. I think he's got a Super Bowl win. He was great with the Seahawks. It's like the Broncos, ever since Elway left, has a jinx on quarterbacks.
Well, ever since Manning left, I think you meant to say.
True. But Manning wasn't even that good with them. He was like almost a caretaker.
He was good enough to get them. That was a team that was led by Von Miller in that defense. But.
Right. He was a caretaker. But there's nothing wrong with being a caretaker quarterback. If you're, one of the things with the Cowboys this year is they've yet to give up 20 points in a game. If your defense in today's NFL can never give up more than 20 points in a game, if you give up 15 to 20 points, you're going to win most of your games in today's world.
But is that going to add any value to your cards? Who gets value?
The quarterback wins the Super Bowl? Yeah. Look, Joe Flacco isn't exactly the world's greatest quarterback, but the Ravens defense got him.
Come on, Joe Flacco's an elite quarterback.
Well, I'll even go Trent Dilfer because I was at both Super Bowls, and neither one of them were great quarterbacks, but they don't have any hobby value. So does Kyler
they still won a Super
Murray
Bowl,
have
and
more
there's still a
value
value to their names.
Well, to their names, but if somebody wants to buy cards, is that really where you're headed? Is to Joe Flacco?
It could be. Seriously. Look, Eli Manning, you can argue whether or not he was an elite quarterback. He's got 2 Super Bowl wins. It's borderline whether he was an elite quarterback. I think he's a Hall of Famer. Speaking about guys that could be on the borderline, there's your borderline. Guy wins 2 Super Bowls. He beats the Patriots twice.
I think he's in.
I agree with you. The question is he first ballot or second or third?
And is there any runway on his cards?
Yeah, there is, because I think he's forgotten at this point because of all the new guys. So I think you look at people almost like that, like, okay, who is not a sure shot Hall of Famer, but he's got 2 Super Bowl. I think there's runway. I think there's move. I think you can do something with Eli.
All right, let's talk about the pop culture side, and I think this is real. Does the Manning cast help the value of both of their cards?
It keeps them in the public eye, certainly.
Abso-friggin-lutely. And now, by the way, there's another Manning playing quarterback in college. So,
Cooper's son. Yeah. Cooper was the third brother and the wide receiver who got hurt, right? His son.
There's a comment there. Somebody thinks Peyton is undervalued of all things.
But I've heard other people say that, because right now, if you look at where the industry goes, they go Brady, they go Montana. If we're talking more modern, there's not a ton of Mount Rushmore quarterbacks. Who am I forgetting, guys? For card value. I'm talking about just from
win 4 Super Bowls, but
I'm talking about just card value, not player.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a New York homer. Daniel Jones. 4-1. The Giants are 4-1. Who the heck expected? I mean, I'm monitoring the game on last Sunday in London, and I'm thinking they're going to lose to the Packers. Okay. And then all of a sudden, I look like an hour later. Giants 27, Packers 22. I said, wait a second. What happened here?
See, that's a great name. There's somebody you can probably still get affordably compared to a Kyler Murray, compared to a Tua. Daniel Jones is probably still cheaper than Mac Jones.
Not here in Allen, Texas, where Kyler Murray played high school football.
Well, let me ask you a question. Who's the better investment moving forward? Daniel Jones or Kyler Murray for the relative price?
Daniel Jones.
Interesting.
Playing in New York is better than playing in Arizona.
Chris, Daniel Jones or Kyler Murray, for taking into consideration the cost now?
I think Murray. I'm not sold on Daniel Jones.
Okay, so for you it's talent, and for Rich it's market, and the answer is probably a little bit of both.
I don't think Kyler Murray stumbles around on a sure touchdown. So
yeah, that is a funny video with the 60-yard run that he ends up stumbling on. But Steve, Young had the 40-yard touchdown run that if you see the video, he's stumbling at the end of it too, except he got into the end zone.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to say is Aaron Rodgers. None of us mentioned. Does Aaron Rodgers get hobby love? Does he not get hobby love?
Aaron Rodgers is complicated. And he's complicated because of some of the other off-field, and it's not bad off-field, but it's just weird off-field things that have come up. The vaccination issue, the lying about it, the relationships with the girlfriend, the fact that he's not talking to his family, his Jeopardy thing. By the way, he was very good when he hosted Jeopardy, by the way.
The hallucinogenics.
There's just so many different things with Aaron Rodgers. And, this year he doesn't know the team well enough, the new guys, so he's not yet gelling with them. He probably needs another year or two if he wants to stay in Green Bay.
Well, the question is, are Aaron Rodgers' cards down now for somebody who's probably going to be a Hall of Famer?
I don't think you're going to get his rookie cards cheap, but you might be able to get some of the other we'll call them tertiary nice cards cheaper. And it may actually be a good thing. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. That's pretty much a lock.
Well, to your point, or is it the Green Bay market that there's just not enough? You think there's a lot of Packer fans, but his prices don't seem to match anywhere near other future Hall of Fame quarterbacks that we've seen.
Well, so, then there's real potential. And the other thing with Packer fans is, sad to say, many of the Packer fans are my age, because that's when the Packers kept winning, in the Vince Lombardi era, kept winning the Super Bowls. They were good, with Brett Favre. Speaking about people, Brett Favre's legal issues could really put an interesting twist onto his prices.
Well, that was going to be my next question is post-career, we usually say guys can't hurt themselves, but Brett Favre may be pulling one of the all-time great post-career collapses here. So, I mean, if you have Brett Favre cards, is there ever going to be a value? Is it going to be much more localized?
Well, he did win, what, 2 Super Bowls?
Hall of
There's
Famer.
that. For a team that does have a pretty big national following, there's that too. He's a Hall of Famer. There's that. I mean, it's not the Hall of good people. It's the Hall of Fame. There are a lot of bad people in halls of fame.
But does it affect card value or card interest?
I think it depends what happens in the Mississippi legal system.
Yes.
Okay. Is this different than Michael Vick?
There's a lot of not good things that have come out. But if it's a blip, not really. But if he ends up, going to jail, that could be something to talk about.
I think for a retired player, for a retired Hall of Famer, this might be as big of a drop as I can remember for an off the field problem in quite some
time. Other than OJ.
OJ Simpson.
You know what? Let me rephrase that. The all-time number one being OJ, and everybody else follows that. So definitely OJ. I sat next to it. Yeah, I sat next to OJ at a restaurant. He stared at me the whole time. It was creepy. Brett Favre won just one Super Bowl. Yeah. Yes, but how many free agent flights did he take? I think he's the all-time leader in free agent airplane visits. So you got to count that.
I'm sure Jen Sturger would have interesting things to say about Brett Favre.
Right. Real quick, I was at Brigandi's this week in New York. For those of you that saw it on social or haven't been there, great night, great collectors, real cool atmosphere. If no one's been, you just get some tremendous speakers, and they actually have started bringing some of their personal collections with them to the dinner. So Mark Mader, Kevin Keating, Mark Salzberg, and I know I'm forgetting people, but Chris Brigandi, Derek Grady, the whole crew there. That was an awesome event. And yes, Logan, I believe the whole team's still on it. So if you've never been to that event, there's a couple things I want to say is food and drink are included. Very important for this hobby. You will not get people in the hobby to come out if you don't include food and drink in your ticket price. Secondly, it's an intimate setting. It is some of the coolest stuff I've seen in person. Some of the tickets, some of the cards. I mean, they've got unbelievable stuff that some of the guests brought. So I just wanted to give a shout out because I try to make it up there to Brigandi's.
So explain, I guess, to me and to the audience, what is Brigandi's? I'm sorry. It's like a high-end coin and stamp shop.
I'm so sorry, Chris. Yeah, no. I've been lost in a travel world. Brigandi started as a coin shop years ago, and we're really world-class leaders. They expanded and have always done autographs, historical autographs, and documentation, and that naturally crossed into sports. Well, their sports division has blown up, to some of the just premium items on the market. And I'm just as much of a fan of their historical items. Anytime you can see a George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or, talk about short prints or limited, those are pretty cool. So Brigandi's has the coin and division. They do movie posters. I found out a whole bunch of stuff that they're getting into. So just some really cool stuff. They have a store in New York. They don't, they're not really at shows and in that part of the hobby. So that's why I like to see them. And if you're in the New York area, just really cool stuff. But I like the guests that come speak. I mean, a guy like Mark Mader with his ticket collection, if you're not familiar, check him out. He, just Jackie Robinson debuts and just some of these low pop all-time tickets that you just don't get to see anywhere else. He brought with him Kobe's debut ticket. Got to see that in person and very cool stuff like that. So
I will point out that I believe at the previous Brigandi dinner, Brian Dwyer of Robert Edward Auctions brought the Wagner that they were auctioning at the time and had it in his pocket to show everybody.
It is that.
So you can see some pretty cool stuff. I mean, Brigandis, if you really research, they've had in the 80s, there were some interesting things with Brigandis, and I suggest you do some research. But what they've done in
40 years later, it was a lovely evening.
Yes, 40 years later, it's a lovely evening. I'm just saying that, people reputation can get much better 40 years later. Kenny Golden is a great example of reputational saving many years later. In the 90s, Kenny Golden had a terrible reputation. Now he has a really good reputation. He sells top-notch stuff.
That's an understatement.
What?
I think that's an understatement with Ken Golden.
Well, I mean, there's been other social media outlets that have been covering his past recently also. So, Rich, to your point, a lot of people in this hobby have been around since before the pandemic, and a lot of that stuff was pre-heavy social media. So you're right. There's probably some stuff out there. But to the fun point of why we enjoy what we do, yes, people carrying amazing cards in their pockets and casually having things like that in their breast pocket is one of the reasons I enjoy going. When you hear experts, like Kevin Keating, who does all the PSA autograph authentications, and he can tell you a Roberto Clemente autograph almost to the year by looking at it. That's unbelievable. We're all good at what we do, but to look at an autograph from a player and to tell them as to the year, that's the type of brain power, and just to be a sponge in that room and listen to some of the hobby experts. I wanted to spread the word. I have absolutely no connection to this. I pay my entry fee. I lost.
I don't know how much was the entry fee.
I think it was. Please, nobody get mad at me if I'm wrong. I think it was $65, dinner and drinks included.
That for $65 for an event like that sounds really.
That's why I'm saying
a fair price, especially in New York City.
That's why I really don't want to ruin it. I don't want too many people to show up, but it is a real secret if you can get out to it. So
I think Jeffrey Lichtman still, I saw pictures of him. He's done talk shows. He's a hobby attorney. He's represented some interesting people in court, but he's also a very well-known hobbyist. And I think he spoke at the.
Yeah, and that's one of the nice things about that room is it is people are a little bit less guarded. You're allowed to have some real frank conversations, Logan, you could not be more correct, and that's part of the reason why I went. Is Kevin Keating? Just some of his stuff. For people who don't know Kevin, he's got a couple books, but he literally, as a child, ditched school and waited all days outside of, hotels and stadiums, and as I think his story was making more money than his teachers in high school, or something like that. So it was an unbelievable night, and I just wanted to bring it to people's attention because it does fly a little bit under the radar for those. Yeah, Chris.
Asking for a friend here now.
Sure.
When is the next collector's night?
So answering for a friend here, I believe they're going to skip the end of the year for the holidays and look towards the spring. Okay. They only do 2 or 3 a year. And for whatever it's worth, I actually take the train from Baltimore. I think it's worth it for the day. It's really cool people just talking about what we love. It's kind of a no-no to sell your product or to pitch yourself. You don't pass a lot of business cards. It's really just a pull up a plate of sliders and egg rolls, have a drink, and what do you have in your pocket that nobody knows about? And since I never have anything good in my pocket, it's always cool to see everybody else's stuff. So definitely, and they're on Instagram and all that.
Could you mind if they turned that into a trade night?
I wouldn't be allowed in the Rich. They wouldn't let me in the room. I'd be walking in with my Bill Ripken T-shirt, and who was it? Was it Kevin Keating? I'm going to be. Please apologize to whoever showed the. No, it was Mark Mader, the Joe Montana autograph rookie PSA 1010, 1 of 1. I can't trade for that. So, very cool stuff. All right, moving on.
Known fact: the guy that used to manage Signature Collectibles at Willow Bend Mall is also the guy who goes with Joe Montana to all his hobby show appearances.
There you go.
So He's now retired, living in the Austin area. His kids are out of college, so he and his wife moved to Austin, having the life. I saw him about 6 months ago because Montana was doing a signing where the Dallas Card Show was. Not at the Dallas Card Show, but the same place. And I ran into him on the street. And the thing was, I'm gonna throw a strange aside. I kind of miss him being at the store because I could have for my synagogue show a Joe Montana 8x10 autograph whenever I needed one as a door prize. I kind of miss that.
Well, yeah, we'll have to. Who was just named the manager of the Israeli baseball team? Was it Gabe Kapler?
Yeah.
We got to get him back into the hobby. Get him going.
Gabe Kapler has an interesting family history too. Nothing bad.
And like bodybuilding. I mean,
yeah.
like
he's fascinating. He's just a fascinating person.
All right, so we're in the playoffs. For those of us in the hobby, we're always told to buy in the off season and sell during the peak. So I'm going to ask 2 questions to my baseball friends here. Is it too late to buy baseball this year, or is it just the right time to start looking at prospects for next year if you're into prospecting?
Chris?
Well, is it too late to buy baseball? There's going to be a ton of baseball coming out between now.
I'm saying for 2022.
2022. I mean, I'm looking at the release calendar for Topps.
Oh, give it to us.
Okay. October 26th, Topps update. November 4th, something called Cosmic Chrome. Allen and Ginter's coming out on the 18th of November. Triple Threads on the 23rd. Something called Gilded Collection also on the 23rd. Stadium Club, which should have been out by now, is Thanksgiving weekend. Bowman Chrome on the 30th. Bowman Inception's coming out sometime in November. December, we have brands like Bowman Draft, 5-Star, Bowman's Best, Chrome Update, and Finest looks like it's going to be coming out in January. So there's a lot of product coming out in the next 3 months. So product normally in a normal year should have been out already. So
Chris, out of curiosity, anything on Heritage Update or Heritage Miners?
Heritage High Number is in December. Heritage Miners is December 14th.
Okay. Usually, and again, this has been such a goofy time, and I mean, I'm a Heritage guy, but usually Heritage High,
and guys, he's talking about the card, not the auction house.
Right. Okay. Well, remember, Heritage Auction House is in Dallas too.
Yeah, that's why I was.
They are a corporate sponsor of Dr. Beckett's podcast, so that's
good friends of mine. But I wanted to. You cannot collect the auction house.
I can collect stuff from the auction house if I can afford. I'd have to be part of the fractional market to get anything from that auction house. But Heritage, the cards, high number are usually very affordable, and usually talk about you use the term runway. There's probably some runway in both those sets.
Okay. So for buying 2022 and last season stuff, Chris, sounds like you've already moved on.
Well, I normally don't even collect current year stuff. I'm saying
if you were to give advice to somebody who wants to buy current baseball, we're obviously don't buy Aaron Judge right now, correct?
No. If you absolutely have to have 2022 stuff, I just say go buy a Topps factory set. I mean,
yeah.
Well, wait, you don't need to buy it now. Wait till the prices get a little.
For example, I didn't realize until I saw the stat. Bo Bichette has led the American League in hits the last 2 seasons, and he's got decent value. But he plays shortstop, and he's leading the league in hits. And there's a whole bunch of shortstops running around. Him, Trey Turner, Dansby Swanson. Hopefully Swanson and Turner, for their sakes, can advance in the playoffs. Right now, they're both down 2-1 for their teams. But there's always room for players. There's always guys under the radar, and if they're under the radar, and that's why I'm pointing out Bichette. Aaron Judge had such a year this year. But, other guys had decent enough years where in other years you would say their cards exploded. It's just Judge just overshadowed everybody. And I was reading a blog this morning where apparently in Yankee Stadium they were booing Judge yesterday because he decided to strike out 3 or 4 times in the game.
Well,
excuse me, the guy hit 62 homers for your team. Give him a friggin' break.
I mean, Buck Showalter was disappointed the Mets got knocked out and they won over 100. Only one team wins it at the end of the year.
And it happened. Francis Lindor had a very nice year. Pete Alonso, who's TX card dude's guy, hit 40 homers or 40 plus homers. He had a nice comeback year. We're dealing with a really strange situation because we basically lost 2020. We had 60-game season. It's like what happened during World War II, where everybody's stats just went, for a good reason, by the way. But you lost 3-4 years. And we lost the season, and then 2021 was kind of jumbled too, and this year was a little bit jumbled because of how the season started and weird things. So next year will probably be the first really normal baseball season in 4 years. So there's room to look at people and say, the Indians have a closer, Emmanuel Clace, I think is his name. And he pitched 2 1/3 innings the other day, and he had like 38 saves during the record. By the way, he was a fire thrower prospect with the Rangers. Send him to Cleveland, he becomes a dominant reliever. And I'm not saying relievers take off, but if this is the beginning of a career for him, not that he'll Mariano Rivera, but if he becomes anything close to Mariano Rivera, you've got a lot of runway with him. I'm just throwing that out as the type of people you have to dig into.
Oh, absolutely. And as we wrap it up here, Chris, what are you looking forward to this week, sports and hobby-wise? What's on your agenda for the next week or so?
Looking forward to the Phillies closing out the Braves this afternoon. Eagles play the Cowboys tomorrow night in the NFL game of the week. The Philadelphia Union got the number 1 seed in the MLS playoffs and are not playing this week. So they play Thursday. This is our year, man. This is our year.
All right, Rich.
And I'm looking forward to next weekend, which is Chantilly. So
I might see you there. I'm still not sure if I'm making it. So we'll hook up. We'll hook up. And I guess it might depend on how Philadelphia does, whether or not you're in a good mood to hang out or not. So, Rich, what's your weekend? What are you watching? What are you paying attention to?
Well, right now in my office, it's been a while, but Dr. Beckett actually dropped off a very nice donation for our synagogue show on Thursday. So I'm processing through that, putting that into bigger boxes instead of the smaller boxes. It's always fun to see things, and I have seen some cards I haven't seen before. And 3 weeks from now is the Dallas Card Show. And it's in, I believe, 30 days of September, April, June, and November. 16, today's the 15th, 14, like 20 days from now is the Dallas Card, 18 days is the Dallas Card Show. So, that's always fun to go to. That'll be, considering a lot of people have been talking about whether card shows are on a downtrend, it'll be interesting to see what's going on with the Dallas Card Show in November.
Well, like I said, I might make it down there for that as well. Guys,
we'd love to have you.
Well, it seems like I know all the Dallas card pressure guys, because I keep getting all the pressure from. So I'm going to make it down there. I promise.
We'd love to have you.
Okay.
By the way, I love the term about exit velocity. You know what we used to call the exit velocity when I was young?
Hitting
an uppercut swing.
Right.
and I'm going to throw out something. A good friend of mine, Paul Rodgers, law dean at SMU, went to Columbia Law. So unlike me, who went to Columbia, Paul actually made something of himself. And he would write books. His favorite team growing up were the Whiz Kids in the 50s, 1950s Philadelphia Phillies. And I'm listening because about 3 minutes from here, he was doing a talk 4 years ago about Jim Constanti. And there was an undertaker in Constanti's bowling league who would tell him his curve wasn't spinning enough. They knew about spin rate in 1950.
Oh yeah.
They didn't call it spin rate, but
They
the guy
couldn't measure it either.
not spinning the ball enough. I mean,
Well, I mean,
we knew all that stuff. We just didn't know these technical terms and all these electronic stuff we know today. And I think that actually touches upon what we talked about earlier. We were talking earlier about outdated stores. It's the same thing. We know what our customers buy if we're an old school store. We don't need to have we don't need to have the fancy things with the point of sale barcodes or the CRMs or anything like that.
Well,
but in today's world where everything is so digitized, the people above us, so to speak, on the food chain need to know that.
Well, I think more data is always good in any capacity of life. More information to help you make a decision. You don't have to live by it, but information is good. And I'm going to give that life advice to end today. Any decision you make, try to gather all the information you can.
I'm reminded of one of my favorite card shows of my youth, Charlie's Angels.
You'll get the last word here, Rich.
What?
You're getting the last word. Go for it.
I'm getting the last word. So anytime I can talk about Kate Jackson, it's a good thing. And like one of the years they let off with an episode where Dean Martin was the special guest star, and he and Kate, whatever role he was playing, and he and Kate Jackson were having a relationship on the show, which is great. And he was like the manager of a gambling casino. And there was some hotshot guy in the 1970s who was like figuring everything out on the computer. And at the end of the thing, it worked because what he figured out on the computer, it went the other way. It still happened. You still have to play the game. You still have to sell the cards. You still have to buy the cards. You still have to enjoy the hobby. We talk about all this, but at the end of the day, it's like, if you don't enjoy it, don't be in this hobby. I mean that seriously.
I think we can all say cheers to that. And that's why we do this. And that's why happy to be on Bench Clue this morning. But you can find Hobby Hotline Tuesdays as well through YouTube and Facebook. Appreciate everybody riding along today when I'm in the cockpit for the first time. Hopefully we had a safe flight and a gentle landing. I want to thank Chris and Uncle Rich for joining along. And please, guys, always follow and like the channel so you can see the upcoming episodes. And Tuesday night will be the new one, and this will be re-released in the coming days as well. Take care, everybody.
Right. Keep on.